one by one is everyone is entering. And I'm really overwhelmed that almost more than 50 people today registered, and most of them said that they will join. So it's like privilege for me, to be a platform moderator only. But I'm really happy that today's web platform for dialogue, this particular panel discussion will be moderated by one of my close friends, Maria De Silva, and she's known as Elsa Maria De Silva, and she's a founder and president for Red Dot Foundation. So she's going to moderate today's panel discussions with all the eminent scholar, and I really welcome you all for today's session. I hand over the session to Maria. Elsa, please be comfortable.
Thank you, Dr. Swati.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Swati. Good evening, everyone. My name is Elsa Marie De Silva, and I'm the founder and CEO of Red Dot Foundation. I haven't actually moderated a panel on Google Meet, so it's a little awkward, but we are going to do our best. So today with me, I have three amazing women leaders. So we have Priti Patkar, who is the co-founder of Prerana Anti-Human Trafficking Center. We have Nappinai, who is Advocate Supreme Court of India and founder of CyberSaathi. And we have Swati Chauhan, who is a family court judge, the principal judge at the family court in Nanded. And all three of them are dear friends of mine. We work very closely together, and I'm really thrilled that they were available to be here and share their expertise with you. Good evening to you all. I'll start with Nappinai. How are you feeling today? How is it going with you?
Thank you for having me here, Elsa and Dr. Swati. It's lovely to reconnect with all of you again. It's been a great day, work as usual. And apart from the fact that we are just locked in, otherwise everything else is regular routine.
Swati, how are you today? How is COVID-19 treating you in Nanded?
Hyderabad is, getting warmer day by day, and today it's almost 42 degrees Celsius. But apart from that, we are fine. Thank you.
And how about Swati, Judge Swati, because there are two Swatis in the room.
Hi, Elsa.
Hi.
The temperature is too high in Nanded. It's about 43 degrees centigrade, and the lockdown, and yeah.
And Priti, how are you? I think you're on mute.
Yes, I'm on mute. Thanks, Elsa, for having me on this panel. It's been a good day. It's been a productive day. And I tried my best to be useful.
Wonderful. In fact, all three of you are always being useful. In fact, there's so much y'all are doing on a daily basis. So I'm going to start with Priti. Priti, this lockdown, the forced lockdown due to the COVID-19, all of us understand it. We understand the reasons for it. However, you work with a very vulnerable group of people, sex workers. You also work with their children and also distressed children. And you have a home in the suburbs of Bombay where many of these young girls are being housed. Can you share some of the challenges that your community is facing during COVID-19?
Sure. So let me begin with the red light area where we work. So for all those who have joined this webinar, Prerana works in the red light area. Our focus is to eliminate intergenerational trafficking into the sex trade. We work both with the women and children. And since the first lockdown, the red light area is completely shut. It's across India, but if we were to speak about Mumbai and the red light areas in Thana and Raigad, they are definitely shut. We work in many of these red light areas. There's a very strong police presence there. There's a very strong police vigilance. Clamping down has happened, ensuring that, there's no soliciting happening, no customers are coming. And because of this, this has resulted in increase in the indebtedness of the women with very meager savings, with already they were indebted prior to COVID and prior to lockdown. This has driven them deeper into the debts. So this is one issue that the women are grappling with. Of course, there are a lot of NGOs, including our NGO, which has from day one trying to do relief work, but I don't think that is enough. Plus, violence and sex trade, I always say, is inseparable. Women and children in the red light areas and in these brothels are frequently subjected to violence by their perpetrators, be it the pimps, the police, the madams, the brothel keepers, the client. And due to this lockdown, there is so much of strife that you find, and the women are not bringing in income for the perpetrators. So there is this frustration among them, and all this is being displaced onto these women. And every time when I talk about violence, I feel besides physical violence, which is very evident, which is visible, we also need to talk about emotional violence. Then these women also are experiencing tremendous intimate partner violence currently. I also want to bring in, plus, women in the red light area are not benefiting from any of the government relief measures because they don't have identity documents, they don't have ration cards, they don't have a bank account, so that is affecting them. I also want to bring at this stage a study conducted by Yale School of Medicine. Recently, they released the study, which is based on modeling studies. And it says, and I quote them, it says, closing down these places of sex work may reduce projected COVID-19 death toll increase in India by 63% post the easing of the lockdown measures. Now, this means a lot to the women. They are going through, as it is so much of insecurity, and this report has already been submitted to the government of India. And if the government of India is going to take this up seriously without any rehabilitation measures for these women, you can imagine what the plight of these women would be. Plus, there is this entire segment of young girls who are trafficked into the sex trade. So UN in their statement, actually warned, and I quote, UN mentioned, there are fears that COVID-19 is going to make the task of identifying victims of human trafficking even more difficult. They're also more exposed to contracting the virus, less equipped to prevent it, and have less access to healthcare to ensure their recovery. Essential and practical operations to support them have become a challenge due to countries adjusting their priorities during the pandemic. And this is so true about victims of sex trafficking. So when you talk about social distancing, I think we have also distanced them from all the support systems that they had in the past. And they are really, their vulnerability has got compounded even more. When it comes to the problems of shelter, the girls and women in shelter homes, maybe I'll take it at a later stage, and we can just continue this conversation with others probably sharing their experience. Thanks, Elsa.
Yes. Thank you, Preeti, for those opening remarks. I think that's very thought-provoking because, whilst we sit in the comfort of our home and socially distance ourselves, it is a class issue. It's a matter of privilege. And many fellow citizens, cannot socially distance themselves, cannot take the precautions, and have lost their livelihoods, have lost access to a lot of resources. So thank you for putting a spotlight on that, and we will delve deeper into that issue going forward. I now want to turn to Judge Swati Chauhan. You worked extensively in the family court, and currently, a long established issue of domestic violence, intimate partner violence is spiking because of the forced confinement. People don't have access to resources, they can't step out, they can't access shelter homes, there's low trust levels with the police. So, at this point, when there's no other choice but to call the police, yet women are reluctant to reach out and use that helpline that is available to them because of the lack of trust. And it doesn't help when they see videos of police beating up the workers, the laborers, the migrants who are returning home. That just reinforces that we are fearful of reaching out to the police. So as a family court judge, and you have done a lot of exceptional work thinking out of the box, can you share some of the remedial measures available for women? Are you seeing spikes in domestic violence? And what is your personal advice to people in such a situation in a lockdown scenario?
Yes, Elsa, you're right. There is a very steep high rise in the cases of domestic violence. Even the National Commission of Women's report says that there is very much spike in the number of domestic violence cases. Now, fortunately, in family courts, there is a post of marriage counselor. So in all family courts, there are marriage counselors attached to the court. So when the lockdown started, we sorted out the list of the cases of the women who are vulnerable, because they come and talk to the marriage counselor face to face, and it is confidential meeting. So women come out with all their problems with the marriage counselor. So there was a list at hand available with the marriage counselor, and then during lockdown, the first thing we did was I asked the marriage counselor to contact all the women who were, like, there were some cases in which in the month of first week of March, in first week, some of the couples were convinced to reconcile because the issues were petty and maybe there was some ego clash, and there was possibility that this couple can get reconciled and be together. So they were given a trial basis period to stay together, and then suddenly the lockdown was announced. So it was very critical to know the well-being of the women there in that relationship. So the marriage counselor, I asked the marriage counselor to contact to all those couples and verify whether they're doing well, or whether they want any support, or whether they want to come out of their home and go back to their parental house and all. So yes, you said the domestic violence cases have increased. Now in Nanded district and sessions court, the district legal service authority has come up with a helpline number. So those in the Nanded district, those women, those who are wanting some help, or there's some domestic violence, so they can contact the helpline number, and the district legal service authorities will provide them whatever assistance they need. So it's not that in lockdown, yes, obviously it is very difficult to approach the police, but marriage counselors or the district legal service authorities were the sources through which we could contact the women and ask for their well-being and ask for help if she is needing any help. One other aspect which I would like to share here is the issue of maintenance. Now, what happens generally, we pass maintenance orders, and especially in the lower income group, the maintenance quantum is not too much. It's 2,000, 2,500, 3,000, 4,000. Now, this is the quantum in which the woman who is separated from the husband, or is, say, divorced wife, or maybe a partner living separately and is entitled for maintenance, and that order is allowed. There are some minor children to be taken care of. Now, this, after the lockdown, this maintenance suddenly stopped. So every month, this amount in which this woman was surviving, she couldn't get that amount now. So the prior thing the first thing which came to my mind is some help should be given to such women whose maintenance is now stopped and they are just having nothing to rely on. So we prepared a list of all such women whose maintenance was stopped and provided that list to the district supply officer, requesting that food ration kits be provided to them. So there were many challenges. I will cut the story short and tell that there was incomplete address, or the telephone mobile numbers were not available, or when call was made, no there to answer the call. So there were a lot of difficulties, and door to door they were unable to provide the ration kit. So then the second option was, they said, we will give all the ration kit to the court and you provide from the court. But in lockdown, again, it was difficult for the women to come to the court, but still we could manage. What we did was, in Nanded family court, what we did was, the list of the lawyers representing these women was made. The lawyers were contacted. They were requested to further contact the litigating women to come to the court on a specific date. So by maintaining the social isolation thing and the lockdown rules, 10 to 12 women were called to the court every day, and the ration kits were given to them. So, because of the security and safety reasons, the courts were practically closed except some urgent and emergency matters. But family court, we were doing the little bit of at least providing ration kit to the women whose maintenance was stopped. And in some cases, there are custody issues, like the children are with mother and the non-custodian is the father, or sometimes the children are with father, mother is the non-custodian, and then they are unable to meet the children during the lockdown period. So virtual access was the only answer to this situation. So in many cases, that order was passed. Virtual access of the children to the non-custodian parents was allowed. So and the staff, like 20% staff was working on rotation basis, and only urgent cases there where there's some emergency were allowed to be filed. So it's not that the access of justice was stopped; it was open in certain case, in certain emergency. Yes, the access to justice was open, and we could do all little bit what was expected in this situation. Second thing, what I feel is, when the court will resume its regular functioning, there will be explode of cases of this domestic violence, matrimonial issues, cruelty, violence. This will all develop. In all cases, on almost all cases, I think there will be need of psychological counseling in each and every case. I think now, with this lockdown and all the problems and the challenges which have come up, every single case coming to the family court will need psychological counseling, I think.
Thank you, Judge Swati. And I think you're right about the mental health. But we'll talk about that a little later. I want to go to Nappinai. Nappinai, you're an advocate at the Supreme Court. You work a lot on gender as well, and you're a cybersecurity expert. You recently launched CyberSaathi. Tell us why it is timely, because apart from domestic violence, we are also seeing a spike in online harassment and cyberbullying. We recently had the Delhi boys' locker room case. So I would really love your views on that.
Thank you, Elsa. If you had noticed, what is the commonality between what Priti was speaking about and what Judge Swati was referring to? It's a sense of despondence which most of the victims seem to have. Already, there is very low trust factor with respect to systems. If you go and speak to anybody, they would automatically say that, law works very slowly, and we may not see the end of this litigation in our lifetime, etc. And in most instances, it would be true also. But then it is a system which has been trying to cater to the best of its ability. Now we come to a situation where we spoke about an unstructured sector, we spoke about a marital relationship and the problems that arise out of it. And imagine this and more coalescing together, because that's what the online platform does. On one hand, already when it came to cyber crimes, most victims believed that they had no remedies. They actually thought that they had to look for headings to see whether there is a particular section that will be applicable for a particular crime. What they didn't realize was the section headings are irrelevant. What matters is the content that is there. And today, on one hand, the victims don't have any additional faith in systems, and you have a spike in crimes online. Unfortunately, statistics point to a horrendous increase in child sexual abuse content being accessed, which is very worrisome, because you really wonder about people's moral values and what they believe is the strength of law in getting back at them. It was a very interesting twist of fate that a news article today talked about how these people who were accessing such sites were being now subjected to blackmail. Firstly, accessing such sites or even browsing for that kind of content is a criminal offense. And here, therefore, they are going to be caught between the devil and the deep sea, because one, they have already committed an offense, and another person is committing an offense on top of that against them, by blackmailing them. And this is what they've landed themselves in. And they'll have to figure this out. This is, one of the issues that I'm dealing with in the matter I'm amicus before the Supreme Court on. But the second part, which is what really concerns us in the discussion for today, which is online harassment of women and to a substantial extent children also. And what you pointed out with the boys' locker room case, what comes out is increasingly the age of the perpetrator, the age of the criminals are coming down. They are becoming younger and younger. Probably they believe that they are invisible online, or they think what they do in the confines of a chat app is not going to leak out, but it did, as in the boys' locker room case, or they think they can't mostly be identified. I just want to first address these myths, that people think that they are invisible online. They are not. They can be traced, they can be tracked, and they can be punished for their acts. So victims should take courage. It is easy for you to sit back and say, oh, the systems don't work. But isn't it better if you still try? And even if a percentage of cases meet success, that will then set the example and will act as a deterrent for criminals to not commit crimes online. So the kind of offenses that you see a spike in during COVID times, apart from the child sexual abuse aspect, which I told you about, is of course trolling and cyberbullying and stalking, etc. But a lot of financial crimes are also being committed. So again, in situations like that, victims seem to think that they have no remedies. As you know, and again, thank you for being part of this CyberSaathi initiative, which I've started. We have already done many sessions together under the CyberSaathi banner for students and then adults, and a combination of both also. And I'm looking forward to a lot more of these sessions that are coming up. But primarily, what is the focus of this initiative, and what is it that is slightly better for online or cybercrime victims than those we just talked about, from the unstructured sex worker situation to a marital relationship, physical violence, etc. They have the option of filing a complaint online. That's a huge move forward. And in fact, that was thanks to the Supreme Court's intervention in this matter, which I was mentioning about Rajwala versus Union of India. The Ministry of Home Affairs has set up a pan-India web portal called cybercrime.gov.in. So any a victim of cybercrime can file a complaint online. You do not have to worry about whether you have chosen the correct police station. They will ask for those options. You can choose what you best believe is the correct police station, etc. But the portal will decide and will allocate the case to the concerned police station. In this portal, there is a special category for offences against women and children. The advantage in that is you can also file your complaint anonymously. So if you have come across child sexual abuse content and for some reason you're scared to file a complaint with your personal details, please flag it immediately, at least as an anonymous complaint, so that it can be taken down immediately. And that option is available in this site. But the anonymous option is only for women and children. If there is no fear, I would strongly advocate women to file their complaints with full details, because then they can have much higher levels of success. And they can also track their cases online. This is just one of the options. If a victim is in need, and if they go to my site, which I've just set up, cybersaathi.org, it's Saathi with double A, SAATHI, .org. They will, if they go to the FAQ section, all the other alternatives in terms of even the email options or the state-wise online options for filing complaints with respect to cybercrimes are available there. If they follow the trail on that aspect, one person I saw had asked a question of what other alternative. They may probably also get more details for filing complaints with respect to physical offenses also, but I cannot vouch for that details to be there, because the site is dedicated to cyber related issues. So you would, however, definitely find a lot of data in the FAQ section of cybersaathi.org on these aspects of the police stations. So to just sum up my opening statement, I would just want to highlight this one message. You know, if there is one message people can carry away from this session, I would say it is this. Whether you're a victim of physical violence or online violence or cyber crime, if you keep hesitating, or if you keep distrusting the system, then the system is also handicapped in helping you. Go to the system, try it out. Remember that there are multiple levels. You can file your complaint with the police station. If the police station, that is the station house officer as we call it, if they don't take action, you can file a representation with the commissioner of police or superintendent of police in districts. If they, even then no action is taken, then you can file a private complaint before a magistrate, or you can also come directly before the High Court and file a writ petition and seek your remedies. Depending on the urgency and depending on the seriousness of the case, courts do intervene and courts will grant reliefs. So trust the system, because if you keep shying away from the system, then you're going to be left with no remedies anyway. So better to try what is available and give it a chance rather than suffer in silence.
Thank you, Nappinai. And that's one of the reasons why I specifically brought you and Judge Swati on this panel, because I want people to feel confident in the system and to also see how the judiciary is responding. You know, Judge Swati in her individual capacity has thought out of the box for many innovative solutions for domestic violence survivors. So we'll come to that in a moment. But talking about systems, Priti, I want to, since you work with a group that could be very vulnerable, not only in the way that they work, so their trade, but also where they live. They live in Kamathipura or in red light areas or slums. And furthermore, they now don't have access to resources. So when we talk about the welfare schemes, like for example, much has been spoken about the cash transfers to women who are registered for Jan Dhan, and we can debate that $500 was very little, but do your community even fall into these welfare schemes, or are they outside of the system? And what is required that systems need to be cognizant of so that we don't leave people behind? Priti, you're on mute.
Thanks, Elsa. I think this is a very interesting question, and a very important question, actually. So, women in the red light area, and I'm not just talking about Kamatipura, okay, across India. If you see women in these brothels in the red light area, they're all without identity document. Okay, so when you have no identity document, obviously you don't have a bank account, you obviously don't have a ration card, so you obviously do not get the benefits that people below poverty line can access. You cannot get Jan Dhan, the scheme declared by a finance minister under for those who have Jan Dhan accounts, because women have no bank accounts. Forget about Jan Dhan accounts. So we begin there. When it comes to any kind of social reform, one thing we should remember, or any kind of services for these women, there's a lot of stigma still attached to the sex trade, to these women in the sex trade. So any kind of planning, etc., we find, any kind of planning for marginalized women, for vulnerable women, you don't see the presence of these women and their concerns being addressed on these tables. The other thing, when it comes to services for these women, I also feel it's so important that we talk about not just that we also address the mental health well-being of these women. It's not just in terms of what services we are giving to the women, but currently in the current situation, this whole issue of uncertainty and unpredictability is resulting in a lot of frustration, anger, and stress among these women, and we are not addressing these issues. And so long as we are not going to be addressing the mental health concerns, I don't think women will even feel free to come up and share what their concerns are and what their needs are. And when we talk about social welfare measures or services, it's important we understand what is it that they want and what is it that is going to help them. The other thing is I always look at the entire ecosystem of services for women and especially marginalized community, and I feel it's so important to make it victim friendly. I feel it's so important that you make them, that there is an enabling environment. I am, for one person, not in favor of creating separate services for separate women. I am very much in favor of social integration and inclusion. And when we talk of inclusion, I feel there are so many services existing for marginalized women. It's just that certain women have access to it and certain women are denied access to it. So earlier, when we started this conversation, you did speak about, you spoke about shelter facilities. Of course, there are shelters and shelters and shelters in the country, but how many shelters would accept and welcome a woman from the sex trade if tomorrow she comes out and says, I've been thrown out of the brothel? So I feel this whole issue of stigma and accessibility and inclusion in the existing services for these women definitely needs to be addressed. And next time, when the finance minister declares any more schemes, any more packages, it's my request on behalf of all the women in the sex trade, please ensure you also address their issues. If the red light areas and the brothels are shut, they have no income, they are getting indebted, they are, facing violence every day. And we are talking so much about violence every day and forgetting this group entirely in our discussion around violence against women. So my earnest request to the finance minister through this platform, please include something for them next time you declare a package. The other is today a lot of our response in terms of measures are very digital based, and I'm not against we all going digital, but we should also remember that India, the digital divide is so big. Most of the victims we work with, like Prerana works with, comes from impoverished families, communities. They're from West Bengal, they're from places like Bihar, where probably even electricity hasn't reached them, leave aside internet. So somewhere I feel, we don't realize that over 50% of Indians have no access to internet and the hardware support. Women who have access to phone, and when women do have access to phone and internet, we have leaders who advocate for the same being taken away from them to keep them safe. They feel that internet and the hardware support and this entire world of communication is doing more harm to women than keeping them safe. So, in this context, I feel somewhere when we give, when we develop responses in terms of relief measures for these women, let it not be always internet based. Finally, of course, my biggest fear with this COVID and lockdown is that we need to figure out how do we track and identify victims of human trafficking. With this lockdown, it has become so difficult for us to track and identify them. And this has resulted in it becoming even more easier for traffickers to hide their operations and make victims increasingly invisible. So even when we are talking about relief measures, we don't know where many of our victims are. Of course, in the red light area, they are very visible. But, all victims of sex trafficking are not in the red light areas. They are hidden. They are the invisible victims. And, somewhere we need to figure out how do we ensure they are also included in these services and these relief measures. And moving forward, we should be very alert that a lot of marginalized women and children are going to fall through the cracks, and what are the kind of relief measures we will create for these women, and how do we include them in the existing services and programs that exist, by not creating, by ensuring there is no stigma, by ensuring you create an enabling environment whereby she feels wanted, and we give her a sustainable rehabilitation program so that she can move on in life and not again get trapped because of her vulnerability. Here, before I end, I also wanted to bring in this whole issue about shelter homes. So we have, Elsa, you asked me this earlier and I said I'll answer that later. But there are shelter homes and shelter homes and shelter homes for women. And I know Justice Swati Chauhan will agree to me that, we've seen amazing shelter homes, and we've seen shelter homes which are, in very deplorable conditions. So for me, it is important that at this in the current situation of lockdown, what is happening within the shelter homes with these adult women and girls who are housed there. What is their life like under isolation? There is this sense that they are cut off from the world. There are no visitors going in, no human resource going in except for the regular staff. Staying in isolation for them for so long is not normal. And not having contact with the outside world, so many of them have not seen their families. So many of the women in these shelter homes need lawyers. There are lawyers who are working on their cases and they are not getting access to them. And I'm not talking about all shelter homes. Here on this platform, my concern, and I'm raising this voice only for those shelter homes where accessibility is really, so restricted, and what's happening to these women and girls. I'm also talking about girls. So there are some women where they had restoration orders in place. They were to be repatriated because they were from other countries, and everything has stopped since the lockdown has been announced. And this prolonged this detention for these women and children in these homes is harming them. And I find very few platforms talking about the mental health and the physical state of these women in these shelter homes. And I think, I'm so glad I got this opportunity to share here also the plight of these women in these shelter homes. And I think we should be also talking about them moving forward. Thank you so much, Elsa, again, for giving me this opportunity on this platform.
You raised a lot of points, Preeti, and it reminds me that this COVID-19 has actually shown us the fault lines in our society and in our governance structures. It also highlights our privilege. I always talk about it as a birth lottery. Imagine we are lucky we were born in the families that we were born in, because our lives could be very, very different. And we are apathetic till it concerns us. So that's the one of the reasons why you feel like, and rightfully so, that the conversation is not about these women but about general. So I hope we can change that discourse. Coming to Swati, Judge Swati, we've seen that during COVID-19, a lot of innovation also has taken place. It's like, for example, the National Commission for Women has floated the WhatsApp number, and I had her on one of my panels, and she said it was overwhelmed in the very first week. I'm volunteering with Project Mumbai and with the Chief Minister's office in Maharashtra. They launched helplines for mental health, and in the first day they had 1,000 calls. So my question to you is, how can we make the system more responsive to violence against women? And going forward, what policy changes can you recommend to build the trust? Because I feel there's a big trust deficit.
Hello. Hi. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay. Yeah. So, yeah, the National Commission for Women has launched a WhatsApp number, and it's like 7217113537 if I'm not wrong. So I saw that short film. In that also, you must have noticed that the woman who was seeking help could not dial the correct number. It went to a wrong number. Some lady was there who was helpful, and she could connect her to correct, and she, on her behalf, she called the police. But the woman or the victim who was seeking help could not even dial the correct number. So, in this regard, I want to say that the social media is accessible to only a fraction of women across the country. According to one study, India has the highest gender gap when it comes to access to internet by women. Only 43% of women can access internet on phone compared to 80% of men. So when it comes to women belonging to lower income group, which is the maximum number of the women seeking help, these women do not simply have the ability to report. Such extreme vulnerable class of women are, I would say, the lost number of cases which do not exist in the statistics, but they exist de facto. De jure they exist, but de facto, de jure they exist, but they cannot find the number in, they are in the lost number of cases. So I don't know if now with this lockdown, everything is going virtual, but there should be some physical access to justice to this woman. Talking on telephone, it's very difficult sometimes. The situation they want to speak out is very difficult to say virtually. In lockdown, other than video conferencing or Skype or calling or virtually lodging complaint is the only way available. But I think the virtual lodging of complaint is never the same as you go in the court or you go to police station, narrate your plight. Body language matters a lot. So these things are really very important, I think.
And even when
And
we talk about access through the telephone, Judge Swati,
yeah,
a lot of these women may have prepaid cards. And whilst we may say those are small amounts, many of them actually don't have access to their phones anymore, because if they are struggling to put food on the table, why would they spend that money on a SIM card, or mobile access? That may
yeah.
be least priority. So we really have to think out of the box. I think Preeti wants to say something on this one. Unmute
I just,
yourself.
I
Yes.
just,
Sorry, no, Justice Chauhan first.
I just want to add that, say for example, my maid, she has a phone, but the she can, it's only incoming phone available on her mobile. I mean, there's no facility of outgoing calls. She will not be able to call anyone. Maybe she is able to receive calls on her mobile, but she, as Elsa said, uh, she doesn't have that much money to have that card so that she can call. She can only receive the calls. So then, if she wants to, lodge a complaint or seek help, she is not able to do that with her phone.
Preeti?
Yeah, so I had heard Justice Swati Chauhan in one of her interviews to a local news channel where she spoke about how in some of the European countries they have got pharmaceutical pharmacy medical stores as the contact point for women to report domestic violence. And I was so happy, Justice Chauhan, to read that Delhi government has linked themselves up with mother dairy booths, the kiosk, and the medical stores, and have started training them now on how to respond to cases of domestic violence. And I've also been advertising and telling women that if they have and are experiencing domestic violence, they can, if police is not accessible and if they don't feel confident going to the police, they can go to these two places and report and at least share what they are going through. And from there, I believe they have a system whereby the person sitting at this mother dairy booth and the medical store then approaches the police and the helpline and tries to establish a linkage between the woman who has experienced violence and the service. So I just wanted to share that with Justice Chauhan, because she had advocated for it almost a month ago in one of her interviews.
Actually, the Chief Justice Geeta Mittal of Jammu and Kashmir, she has passed a recent order um, taking suo motu notice of the negative impact of the lockdown on women and girls. Uh, she has she has created a designated space such as pharmacies and grocery shops where women can go and report domestic violence in Jammu and Kashmir. Uh, yes, I think that is needed everywhere now. And in as Priti said, I was like, it was very small group where I was talking about this domestic violence and how to come out of that violence and seek help. One of the thing I shared was a WhatsApp group or maybe the neighbors. I mean, when domestic violence is happening, neighbors are not unknown to this fact. They know. So maybe that woman is connecting to her neighbor, saying that if out of my window or in my gallery, if you see red color or whatever color cloth as a signal, please call me. You may, it's a signal that I want help. So these are certain things which should be, innovated and at our own community level, or for seeking some community immediate help of neighbors or some relatives residing in the neighborhood, to call them for help. That such tips are available.
Thanks for those add-ons, Preeti and Judge Swati. I know Nappinai wants to also come in on this, but before that, Nappinai, it begs to bring up the point that we need more investment in education, because even if we are talking about bystander intervention on the part of neighbors or family members or friends, we need to
नहीं नहीं अभी मैं 5 मिनट हो गया
we need to be able to recognize the violence. We need to know the remedial measures. And then, of course, have the confidence to come forward and break the silence, whether you're a survivor directly or indirectly, because even if you're witnessing violence, you're a survivor in a way. So, what would you recommend? And Swati Chakravarti, may I give this example that one of your Zoom meetings was bombed. That's why you switched to Google Meets. So this particular platform, one of the previous panels had that Zoom bombing. So I think at all levels, we need to educate ourselves on best practices, on what is violence, etc., etc. And, I would like your thoughts on that. And you can add to the previous question too.
Absolutely. In fact, this is precisely the issue I wanted to add on, Elsa. So I'm glad for the question. See, a lot of issues have been raised and some very innovative solutions which some states, some individual initiatives have brought up have also been highlighted. But apart from all the other, my specialization in cyber laws, etc., my origins, which is nearly about 30 years back, is from criminal law. So let me just bring a little practical perspective here. On one hand, I know I started off with the positive statement about why victims should go and seek remedies. But when they go and seek remedies, let's also address these issues about going to pharmacies or giving an indication in some other place instead of to the police station, etc. Ultimately, for the law to take action, you will still be required to go to a police station and file a complaint in writing. Now, this is where the problem really arises, because you have a law which was passed in 1872. The Criminal Procedure Code was passed in 1872, and it has to deal with these kind of evolving problems. And whilst the law has been very dynamic and it has survived and sustained all these evolutions in technology, it still lays down a lot of restrictions. I would say that one aspect is about creating awareness amongst victims and probably even their ecosystems. For instance, a neighbor may be equally scared of filing a complaint on behalf of the victim. They may not know that they're entitled to file. Anybody can file a complaint with respect to what we call a cognizable offense, which literally means an offense which a police can take note of in simple language. So even a neighbor can file a complaint. Any person who knows that an offense has been committed can file the complaint, but it has to be filed in writing. If they are made aware of how the law functions, what can they expect when they go to the police station, how much of their involvement or time will be needed in the long run also. So now, for instance, courts are becoming very conscious about the value of witnesses' time. Earlier, it was almost like, oh, I am the court. It is your job to come and wait here endlessly. Too bad for you if your case has not been taken up, right? And then the witness would have to come for multiple times and they feel harassed. All those things are changing, but a lot more changes have to happen with certainty on this. So I wanted to actually come in to say, one, awareness about laws and the remedies available and the procedures involved are essential not just for victims, not just for their ecosystems, but actually most importantly for police. And on an earlier point that Priti mentioned about the travails that the sex workers go through with respect to stigma, etc. The very fact that we would talk about something as a profession to be avoided and something being, they should look out for something more honorable, itself delineates them into a profession which is supposed to be avoided. It is a reality. So we need to accept that this is a profession which is here which has been there for many centuries and will probably outlive us also. So we cannot talk about it as if it is something which should be just brushed under the carpet. We need to figure out and evolve legal methodologies for persons who are in this field to confidently go forward and get their remedies. I really think the time has come now for us to accept this as a certainty and move forward. It may sound utopian, but we are seeing the kind of judgments. You've seen how the Supreme Court has come through on so many seminal judgments from 2019 to even early 2020 also. So the time is right for this now, according to me. And when we're talking about this aspect of stigma, therefore, the most important thing, which I know you and I have in fact discussed about this about a couple of months back, on sensitizing judiciary and police. One, about how they should conduct themselves. What is the body language? What is the kind of communication they should do with the victims who may come from the sex trade? With victims, and we in fact talked about it on a much wider spectrum in terms of offenses against women and children, but it applies to every single aspect we have addressed here. The number of times I've seen these situations where the victim will be treated as if they are the criminal, as if they have committed a wrong. I fully understand that police have to do their job and ensure that a false complaint is not given, to ensure that the person is really a victim and that what they are saying is true, and not just to not out of some kind of malified days or to out of vindictive motives, but to just start off in a very aggressive manner as if the victim is a culprit, and also value judgments. Early cases I have dealt with in terms of cyber crimes also, where women have fallen victim. The first question that will be asked of them, let us say for instance a morphing case, will be, oh, why did you share this picture? And then when the victim says, but I haven't shared anything like it, this is not me, it is somebody has merged. Morphing is where you merge somebody's face with somebody else's body, etc. So this is not I, it is being merged, etc. There will be this whole suspicious attitude towards the victim of, are you sure you didn't share, etc. So I would, if I were intervening on behalf of the victim, the first question I would ask the police is, even if she has shared, so what? That doesn't give the criminal the right to disseminate it further online or to blackmail her using that. So to question her as if she has committed some grave crime is not correct. And then we would have to move forward. So this value judgment, which I have seen in one case, for instance, where a lady had an extramarital affair and the couple had reconciled everything. They have decided to give their marriage another go. But the police think they can be moral police and decide whether she did the right thing or not. And when she falls victim to a cyber crime pursuant to the extramarital affair, they actually refuse to register the complaint, saying, you are lacking in moral values. So what a person does in their private right as an adult cannot be held against them in terms of initiating action for criminal acts against them or for any other thing, under the Domestic Violence Act, whatever. Any criminal provision that is available as a remedy to a victim, it has to be given to them. And if any victim is listening to this out there, I can give you a very simple remedy. One, understand that sometimes the police may just be doing their job, and when they step out of those bounds and ask questions like this of moral policing, be polite still, do not become emotional, because most times this is what happens. I'm not saying women become emotional, I'm saying victims become emotional, right? And then they lose perspective. So hold your cool and simply ask the policeman to give his refusal in writing. The minute you ask them to put it in writing, they will hesitate. They will be scared because they know very well that you will take what they've given in writing and go to the next level. If the policeman refuses to give something in writing, and if he also refuses to register your complaint, politely say thank you, move out, give the representation to his higher up, as I mentioned earlier, to the commissioner of police or the superintendent of police, depending on whether it's an urban or a rural area. If in spite of that action is not taken, as I told you, go to court. And also today we have very, very powerful tools of social media and communication methodologies where once an injustice is brought to light, there is crowdsourcing of support, and that crowdsourcing ensures that action is actually taken. So many of the issues that have been discussed today, I realized that in nearly about 30 years of my practice, nothing seems to have really changed in terms of the approach towards the systemic approach I'm talking about towards handling the offenses pertaining to women. I was also thinking, because from my generation, I traverse the time between when we did not have computers, we did not have mobile phones. There were still victims of domestic violence. There were still victims of violence per se, right? And complaints were still filed. What did we do in all those days without technology? It is not like justice was not delivered. There were still methodologies which were followed, which within a very short time of technology reaching us, we seem to have forgotten. So we need to also keep in mind tried and tested methodologies, evolve new methodologies, and yes, just to add to the statistics what Judge Chauhan mentioned, I was appearing for a case recently, and I was shocked to find out that only 70% of India is connected through smartphones or otherwise. So one aspect is of women being connected, and when we are talking about 1.3 plus billion and 30% of that, that's a huge number still. So technically, if we are going to move justice delivery systems to a virtual measure, then we cannot ask each individual to rely on the options that are available with them for them to seek their remedies. We will have to provide a common resource, because you can't shy away from virtual courts or virtual remedies or tech-enabled remedies. You will still have to opt for it, but there has to be common resource pools for these kind of tech-enabled solutions. I remember about nearly 15, 18 years back, as part of a CSR initiative, one of these South Indian companies started a kiosk for farmers. It was so futuristic. I'm talking about 15 plus years back, So what they did was they set up kiosks in regional, this was in Tamil Nadu. So they had set up the kiosks in Tamil. So the farmer could go to the kiosks and ask questions about crops and some of the problems they may be having in terms of an infestation, etc. So here is an idea for creating a common resource pool for victims to go to if they do not have a smartphone, if they don't have computers. So we have to make it more inclusive, as Priti rightly mentioned, but more inclusive from a physical methodology which will include infrastructure, etc., a mental or a psychological aspect, and we have to take into account one thing. All of us actually forget that just as scared as victims may be, just as scared as neighbors may be, actually police are also quite scared. It is out of fear most times that they are so reluctant to take up new cases, register them, take action. There is the suspicion that they have also sometimes is born out of fear. So we also have to understand that they are doing their job, be respectful to them. Stop fearing a person in uniform. The very concept of a uniform is meant to create that fear or that sense of discipline. But that is for people who are committing an offense. It is not meant for people who are victims. So be confident when you're approaching an authority figure, but be polite yet firm and see the results. And like I told you, where they refuse, try as much as possible to push for them to give it in writing, because the minute something is given in writing, including particularly the reasons for the refusal, then the next level will be made that much easier. And today, one additional thought on this, every police station now has CCTV cameras. So it is not like police can also refute the fact that you went there to give a complaint and it has not been taken on record. You know, Elsa, we had this session recently where we spoke about the impact of movies, right?
Yeah, but you know, but Nappinai, we are completely out of time, and that's a whole different discussion. So, yeah, you know, basically, we have lots to think about. The panel has been amazing, talking about various aspects of violence. Sorry to cut you off, but I'd like to give Priti and Judge Swati very quick last words, if you may, and then we have to wrap up because we are already over time. So unless Swati, do we have a few minutes extra? So maybe Nappinai, finish your thought, and then I'll ask Priti and then Judge Swati to give their last comments. Yeah.
Thank you, Swati, for the extension of time. So I was actually just closing out with one final thought there, Elsa, saying that you know, there's no point in movies just wanting to show reality without giving solutions. So we have too many movies talking about offenses against women, offenses against children. But I would really appreciate movies also giving practical guidance or some direction in terms of what is the solution without it resulting in vigilante justice. I'm really concerned when in movies I'm seeing vigilante justice where an audience claps for it. That is the true death of systems. You know, when we think vigilante justice is the only alternative, we have to start and pull back and come back to trusting systems. So I was just closing out with this thought that here is another means of communication where positive messages can also be carried forward, which will actually help victims. Because on one hand, it is important for them to know the kind of ills that prevail in society, be it online or offline. And in fact, that, you know, was one of the reasons why I set up CyberSaathi, and we're doing our awareness programs also and all that. But the other side of it is knowing your remedies and trusting it. Thank you.
Thanks. Priti, and unmute yourself. Have to unmute yourself. Unmute.
Okay, so great. You know, maybe I'll speak about this again, about, you know, what she said. Movies are not giving solutions. So there was a question in the chat box. So maybe I'll end by just talking about solutions. So somebody. Part of this group, you know, who signed up for this webinar has asked whether anything is happening for children of prostitutes that we are working with. Do we offer rehabilitation services? So thanks for asking this question. And I want to begin by also saying change has happened. Okay, so I am 35 years into it, you're 30 years into it, and I have seen change. So I still remember during my first year of work in the red light area, when I took a child, a daughter of a prostitute, to the local police station saying that she was raped. You know, the police officer asked me to sit down, very polite, very appreciative of my work. And he said, Preeti, this is not rape. This is grooming. Every child born in the red light area, especially a girl child, is groomed this way so that they can be inducted into the sex trade. And our job was to disrupt this intergenerational cycle into the sex trade. I'm not getting into this entire discussion around sex work and sex trade. Our work is to ensure you create choices for people. Our job as an organization is to ensure that you protect the dignity of these women and children. And when I say dignity, it is not dignity as I understand it. It is dignity as the women understand it. And from the day we started work till today, women in the sex trade speak about dignity when it comes to themselves and their children. And they say dignity for them is anything other than the life from the sex trade. And our job since then has been to ensure that we create these choices so that children born to these prostituted women have the right to choose their path, whatever that path is. That they are not denied education and access to schools and education just because they were born in the brothel in the red light area to prostituted women. And yes, for the person who asked me this question, we have children who've gone to school and have made a choice not to be anywhere near the sex trade. We've had women who've come to us and said that they want a life out of sex trade. Having said that, has Prerana as an organization gone into the red light area and conducted rescues and said, sweep off this red light area? No, no, never. As a matter of fact, we were the first organizations to recognize that these women have civic rights and they have to be ensured. We were the first organization to even talk about their right to ration card. So while they are in the sex trade, our job is to protect their rights. While they want to step out of the sex trade, our job as an organization is to tell policymakers that it is their right to be rehabilitated. So we better create rehabilitation and alternative services for them. So just, as the ending statement, we run services for children of prostitutes in the red light area. We were the first to design something called a night center for children so that while the mothers are with the customers in the evenings, the children have a safe place to stay. So we were the first to design a night care center, which has become so popular that now you see night care centers in many red light areas. And what makes me very happy is that we are not alone. We have managed to socialize the intervention in sex trafficking, and we managed to socialize the intervention for women born and brought up in the brothels of the sex trade. And I don't know whether I'm going to get time again, but I always like to say, and especially in the current situation, I love to quote what Dalai Lama said: be kind whenever possible, and it is always possible. And once again, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to say things about the community, which is kept purposely invisible, where the women have the voice, but people don't like to listen to their voice. Yes, so I'm feeling so happy you all gave me the opportunity to represent these women on this webinar. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Preeti, if you can leave a contact email in the chat section because people want to get in touch. I think I can't see Judge Swati. I think she dropped out. So we've run out of time. There was a question on what can survivors of domestic violence do apart from going to the police. I think at this point, you can equip yourself with knowledge, with remedial measures. You can also connect with other survivors. You can access helplines. There are mental health helplines. There are lots of legal aid that various lawyers are giving. So you reach out to them. And we at Red Dot Foundation have Safe Circle. I put the link in the chat section. It's every Friday at 3 p.m. You can join the community and learn and share strategies over there. So thank you very much. I enjoyed myself. I've learned a lot as well. I know these three women for a long time, but I still continue to learn from them. So thank you very much. And I'm going to hand it over back to Dr. Swati Chakravarti. Thank you for giving us this opportunity.
It's a brainstorming session, and I must admire that all the three panelists. You are amazing. I came to know so many things for the first time, and yes, rightly said by Elsa that we faced a challenge. Some of the participants were there in the same webinar, And that day was very challenging for me as a moderator, that how I could handle those, nasty words and showing something. So it was very, very, but challenges are there. So that's why opportunities are also there. So thank you so much. And very soon I'm going to launch a web platform for dialogue website. So I really welcome yours, comment, your bloggings, and your good wishes for my upcoming project. So thank you so much, Elsa. Again, thank you is not enough, I know, but I don't have anything from my side, and we'll keep on continuing this kind of dialogue for I don't want to say the vulnerable word, but I really want to say they are more stronger than us, who are being violated with their rights, with their opportunities, with their lack of voices. They are the real fighters in my own terms. So thank you once again. I really wrap up this session. I really don't want to lose you. Maybe we can have another round of discussion, something like this. We can have another panel discussions. So here for today, good evening all and good night from my end and from Web Dialogue, and how we can continue definitely with your suggestion. I'm very much new in this field, so maybe we'll continue with your guidance, and please accept my thanks. Okay, Elsa, bye bye. Bye, ma'am.